Hi, I'm Martin Jarvis, and once again I want to welcome you to another perspective. Knowledge, it's a wonderful thing to some. It is very challenging sometimes to step outside of yourself and begin to examine things, look at things that are beyond you, are beyond me. But what I'm suggesting today is that is the that is the recipe for growth. We understand growth as it pertains to our physical bodies. We understand pushing our bodies to the point beyond the capacity to which our bodies can stand, or our muscles can stand, and that's how we build more muscles. And we embrace that, some of us. But you know, most people don't. We live in a nation, we live in a world that is full of people, the majority of people that are out of shape. And not really in good shape because of our unwillingness to do what it takes to get ourselves into that place where we are in good health. We don't want to get up, we don't want to work out, we don't want to eat healthy because these things don't seem fun to us. They stretch us beyond the point to which we are willing to go. And we need to change that. What I'm suggesting today, that even more detrimental and probably related, is our unwillingness to go beyond the place of our current understanding, to learn more stuff, to learn new stuff, to entertain things that are outside of our current realm of belief. And so we stay where we're at. And in a sense we stagnate. What is stagnation? It's like a body of water that is not moving, and it becomes sickly. And so when you consider our situation today health-wise, it's obvious. We can see that. But what I'm suggesting today is there is this mental sickness, this mental stagnation, when we don't entertain things outside of our current realm of belief, okay? And you know, I'm reminded of a biblical story of an owner of property, what they call a master, that was going to a faraway town and took 3 of his employees and before them gave each of them a certain sum of money. To one he gave maybe 1 denarii, okay, another maybe 10, another a large sum of money. And then he went to a faraway land. And in time he came back home and he called account of those gentlemen that he left that money with. And the first one said, well, here's the money you gave me. I'm giving it back to you. I buried it in the ground because I didn't want anything to happen to it. I didn't want to lose it. So here's what you gave me. And the master was angry because you didn't do anything with what I gave you. All you're giving me back is what I gave you. And the second guy said, well, here, I invested it a little bit. And I got a little bit more than what you gave me here. It's all yours. And the master was angry with him as well because he didn't do much. Then the last guy, man, he really invested the money and worked that money and created a large sum just from that little bit of money that was given to him. And he gave it all to the master, and the master was pleased because he had used the money, the resources that he was given wisely. And he had a very large return on it. And so I want to share that with us today, that story as an analogy to our lives, you know. And that we've been given so much, and to me the most valuable asset that any of us have been given, and I've shared this before on the physical motivational program, is our bodies. And so how we take care of our bodies, what do we do? Do we just maintain and just become lethargic and overweight and unhealthy, or do we take care of ourselves? And because there's so much potential. You know, and now I'm not trying to be a Mr. Universe. I'm not trying to compete. I'm not even trying, but I'm trying to do something to keep my body right. I'm trying to do something, you know, within the realm of my reach to make myself better. What I'm suggesting is that our minds are the same way. That how many of us are unhealthy minded simply because we have not pushed ourselves beyond that place that is comfortable, okay? And because there is a big return. And lately we've been talking about the science and the quantum physics and about religion and spirituality, and it's sort of uncomfortable for some folks It's uncomfortable for the spiritual folks to embrace the science. It's sometimes uncomfortable for the science folks to embrace the spirituality. But really the key here is to reach beyond what you currently believe, what you currently know, to stretch yourself. Because as we understand, we use a very small portion of our brains, as far as what, and we know that, especially if we have kids, right? Our parents probably said the same thing about us. But anyway, we have a long way to go. It's like having this really advanced computer system, right? But just using it to play solitaire on. And not even recognizing the power and potential you have at your fingertips. And then when you factor in AI, you have all of the knowledge, all the possibilities, all of the computations, anything that you need to access is at your fingertips, but we're spending our time playing solitaire every day. And you see the waste in that, right? You see the potential that your computer has to do so many great things, but it's just like we're just right here in this small piece. Not even utilizing the vast amounts of memory and storage and calculating power and potential it has, and access power, especially with AI. What I'm suggesting is it's the same thing with our brains. We don't stretch ourselves. we don't go out any further than we need to. And what I'm suggesting is that it's like wasting. We're wasting the potential that we've been given. Okay? And I find this very frustrating at times, especially with religious folks. Who refuse to look at things that might challenge, or even make them think about what they've embraced. Whether it's, the origins of the Bible, or who was King James really, or what, and the teachings of Christ versus the antics of the church, whether it's the European church that made exploits into various lands, or even the church in America today. Why are the preachers and pastors living in larger homes and finer restaurants and better clothes than their parishioners? Was that really the point of Christianity? And so, but if we don't entertain thoughts outside of our current realm of belief, this is where we're at. A lack of education. And when I say education isn't necessarily formal education. Okay. Let me give you a little bit of background. I know in many programs I talk about my education, how when I was 50 I went back to school to earn my associate degree, my bachelor's degree, and my MPA, yes. But before that, I was attending MIT. Now you might say, what? And then, no, not really attending MIT, but I was sitting in on the classes. Okay? Now understand this, I was just a walking mailman with a high school diploma, delivering mail in the inner city for hours a day. But I realized something. I realized, first of all, the physical part of it. If I have to walk every day, 20 miles a day, which is what my route was, I'm going to turn this into exercise. So I'm at least, when I get up in the morning, every morning, I'm going to eat healthy all throughout the day, throughout my mail route, all the way until I get off of work. That way, since I have to exercise, I might as well eat right while I exercise. Okay, that was my logic. Okay, so I pushed myself beyond necessary. Beyond the unnecessary requirement. And as well, I decided since I had to be out there walking like 5 and 6 hours a day, I might as well be thinking about things that will increase my intellect. So I mean, I was studying, I was studying psychology, I was studying economics, I was studying marketing, I was studying Six Sigma, some of y'all know what that is. I was studying all kinds of things. Matter of fact, once I bought 3 books for the price of one. They were on sale, and one of them was How to Buy Bank-Owned Properties. And I put that, I didn't even listen to it. I just bought it because they were cheap that day. This is on audiobooks. And then about a month or 2 later, I decided to listen to it. I was bored one Saturday. And it was like, man, that's interesting. So it was a quick read. It was about a 6-hour read. And then the next Monday, that was Saturday. Monday, I went ahead and just listened to the same audiobook again. And within 30 days, my first bank-owned property, okay? And simply because I opened myself up to knowledge that I didn't have, okay? And the MIT thing came, I was just bored, and I was still on the mail route looking at YouTube stuff, and there was this, they were having lectures, the actual classroom lectures from MIT on quantum physics. Sounded kind of interesting. So I started accessing it, okay? And so for the next, I don't know, year or two, that's all I did was listen to lectures on quantum physics, actual classrooms where these MIT instructors were teaching their students. Now, admittedly, half the stuff I didn't understand, but half the stuff I did understand. And I was intrigued by that. So guess what? For 20 years now, I've been studying quantum physics. Not formally, no college credits, because I probably failed the classes, but I got some good stuff. And then I began accessing other audiobooks, the lectures of a guy named Richard Feynman. He was a pioneer in this stuff, you know, from like the 60s and all. And then I've studied now on YouTube. There's stuff with Einstein, with entanglement, with uncertainty, with dark matter, with all this stuff that I've been studying over the years. Now this is in addition to my actual formal college education where I earned my MBA. Because it's like knowledge is like food, and you know, for real, in order to stay, you know, physically fit, I pretty much relegate myself to pretty much the same foods, you know, most every day pretty much. But as far as knowledge and insight and understanding, man, it's like an a la carte menu out there, and when you know enough of this, begin to study something else. And there's so much out there everywhere that you can study it, increase your thought process, increase your mind. And folks just aren't trying to do that. And I'm telling you, this is why we're victims. This is why we're victims to ill health. This is why we are victims to ill politicians. Because they're educated and we're not. And so they're taking advantage of us often if they're not good, if they're not good-hearted, and we just think, man, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Well, the reality is we're being manipulated because we have a lack of insight, a lack of understanding. There's a biblical verse in Scripture that says, my people are destroyed because of their lack of knowledge. But what do we do? We abhor knowledge. We abhor anything outside of what we already know, and that's what's messing us up. Man, I'm looking at this thing, man. I have subscriptions to certain scientists, you know, and podcasts, and it's just amazing listening to stuff and trying to grasping things that I have no clue of. Now, many of these podcasts I listen to, I'd say maybe a third of what I'm listening to I may not understand, but then on my phone I have AI, ChatGPT, so I'll be doing, you know, looking up, listening to a quantum physics podcast, and they talk about, you know, inflation, you know, as far as it relates to quantum physics. So I go in there, you know, what is inflation as it relates to quantum physics? So with AI at our fingertips, even before when I was studying these things, you know, on YouTube, it's like, well, I just had to go past it because I didn't quite get it, but that's okay. It's still fun to listen to. But now if there's something that I don't understand, I can just go right to ChatGPT and say, I put the YouTube video on pause, go to ChatGPT, you know, what is this thing? And I get the understanding, and then I go back and continue listening to that YouTube podcast. It's very, very important for our growth. Because I look at, like I'm attached to this one professor's podcast, and his name is Hakeem, and I don't know what his last name is. And he interviews, like, you know, lesser known scientists. And so, of different, and he's an astrophysicist, but he interviews from all different aspects of science. So the other day I was with this guy, he was talking about the depths of the ocean. That's where his expertise was, way deep in the ocean, and that was very intriguing to me, learning things I didn't learn. And so I listened to this one expert woman. She was an expert on black holes, okay? Another one on dark matter. And I'll tell you something very interesting. That yesterday, popping up on my feed on this guy's podcast, I looked at it, and there's one of my cousins. I have a cousin in New York that's a scientist. His name is Eric Jarvis, E-R-I-C-H Jarvis, and he studies bird brains and all the amazing things that. And I hadn't spoken to him in 50 years, and he's popping up on my feed, and I enjoyed that conversation. And I shared it with my family when I came home. But there's so much knowledge out there. And our brains are utilizing they're not even utilizing close to any of the potential that we have. And so in a kind of symbolic way, even when I look at the quantum physicists that are studying space, or this guy that was studying the depths of the ocean, it's like It's almost symbolic of our brains, how we have so much that we can learn, so much that we can understand. But we're focusing on things, on playing solitaire. Rather than go there. And I'm telling you, this is man, many people, I'm amazed at how many folks are afraid of AI. Now, admittedly, there are some problems like the water usage, they're going to figure all that out. They could use AI to figure out how do we do this, So there are certain problems with AI, but folks are so afraid that AI is going to destroy the world. I mean, we've seen too many movies. We've seen like iRobot, and we've seen so many other movies out there that give us this fear that we can't embrace the goodness out of AI or afraid of it. Man, I use AI for all kinds of things. For any time I have a question or something, there were times in life where you would just go on, and just not have that question answered. But there was almost nothing that you need to go through life not understanding with AI at your fingertips. We shouldn't be afraid of it. It's a wonderful tool. I was speaking to this one person, and they were, AI, we should just, human interaction, and I'm like, no, AI is a tool. And man, I've written like 25 or so books. My first 5 or 6 or 7 books, my sister, the PhD, she was my proofreader. And I think by the second book, she was getting tired of it because she's my sister. She was helping me because I'd be, well, how's this? I'd send it to her. Then she'd send it back. Well, look at this correction. Should be a comma here. Should be a colon here. Man, I'm like, why don't you just correct it and send it back to me? But she was doing like the teacher with the red ink, And so we went back and forth. And my first few, I don't know how many, 5 or 6 or so books, she proofread them for me. But it was a back and forth, and it was a tedious process. Now, I just send my transcripts through AI and say, make all the grammatical corrections. And within like 10 seconds, it's done, okay? It's a tool. It's sort of like a screw. Say you're screwing a screw into a piece of wood. You're putting together a desk or something, and you're just using your hand to screw that screw, and it's hurting, it's painful, and it's slow. Eventually, you'll get it in there. Not even all the way, but you'll get it in there good enough so that desk will stand. But then they came up with the screwdriver. Wow, this is great. Use the screwdriver. You're going to keep doing it with your finger or the screwdriver. Then they came up with the screwdriver like I have with the battery in it. Craftsman screwdriver. You just push it in there and it screws in there in like 5 seconds. I mean, it's nothing to be afraid of. It's just a tool. People are afraid of things that they shouldn't be afraid of. Man, when they were inventing airplanes, people were afraid of it. If God wanted us to fly, He would have given us wings. That kind of stuff. People were afraid of the heart transplants. All these things, these scientific discoveries, medical discoveries, people were afraid of. And we've seen the movies. Some of the movies where a guy gets a heart transplant, then he begins to take on the mind of the person who had the heart, the evil mind or something, or he gets a hand transplant and it's choking him. I mean, we have so much fear about the unknown. No, man, it's unfounded. AI is a tool. And we have the intellect to do great things. All of the stents, heart stents, heart surgery, angioplasty, all these things that we know how to do. Come on now, it's because somebody stepped outside of the comfort of their own intellect and wanted to learn more. And what I'm suggesting is that's why we're lacking today. And in my opinion, is that we would be so far advanced if people weren't stuck with this mindset of I'm comfortable where I'm at, okay? That there are people that are comfortable where they're at, that individual would have been the one to invent this great thing, or to discover this, or discover that, or discover the cure to this, or the cure to that. But so many of us are so satisfied where we're at, that we are the ones that should have. But rather than us, it was this other guy who may not have even have gone as far as we could have gone. Man, and I was really impressed once, and this was years ago. Maybe this was a lot of years ago, maybe 40 years ago. I'd read this article, and I cut it out and kept it, about this mother. She was a woman on welfare. She had like 3 or 4 kids. She was just a typical life of a person on welfare, that was just going to be their life. But all of her life, from the time she was a younger person, she always wanted to be a doctor. And so she had determined at this point, she had like 3 kids on welfare, her situation was jacked. She decided that she was going to go to school, go to night school, and whatever. She was going to make her way to become a doctor. Man, I'm telling you, it took her like 15 years or more, but that woman eventually became a doctor. And you know what? That all that time that she spent on welfare, all that time that her life wasn't what it could have been, that didn't even matter anymore. She's a doctor, and I'm sure by now she's a retired doctor. She was able to change the trajectory of her life, and I guarantee you, those 3 kids that she had, she affected the trajectory of their lives. That would have been something that was something now, way more than it would have been if she had stayed in that position that she was in. Why? Because she had decided that she wasn't satisfied knowing simply what she knew. She needed to know more, and she did it. Man, and I'm telling you that it's like things, it's built upon all of your knowledge, all of your education. So when I was studying quantum physics, I had no idea Obama was going to be president. I was going to be impressed so much. I was moved to go to school that I was going to get an associate degree, a bachelor's degree, and an MBA. I mean, I didn't know that. But what I'm suggesting is, as I was listening and studying the quantum physics, sitting in on these lectures at MIT through YouTube, all this stuff was building up to gave me a hunger and a thirst for knowledge. And it was like at the right time, I decided to go to school just to get an associate degree and just didn't stop till I had an MBA. But it was all a process of opening myself up and learning and hungering for knowledge and got me to that point to where now there was a formal education available, and that's what I did. And that's the way it is all through life. And so we have to expose our children. Now let me tell you, when my daughter was young, she was about 4 years old, I took a lot of heat. I took a lot of heat from my wife. I took a lot of heat from my sister. I took a lot of heat from my mother, from her, my wife's mother, all these people, because I wanted my daughter to practice the martial art when she was going into kindergarten. Now, we want the best for our kids. And we were sending our kid to a real good school. That school had like 5 black kids in it. And my daughter was a little bit pudgy. She wasn't really overweight, but she wasn't, she was a little bit pudgy. And all I knew was sending my little black daughter to this school, which was a good school, but with these kids, these white kids, and she was a little pudgy black kid, and not too many of them. She was like the perfect opportunity to be victimized by these kids. Y'all know what I'm talking about. And so I figured I needed her to practice karate. Now in my mind, first of all, I practiced the martial art, many types of martial art throughout my life, up until I was about in my mid-30s. So I know the confidence that martial art builds in an individual. I also know that most people have no clue about martial art, especially kids. So if you walk into kindergarten and they know that you practice karate, even if you're really elementary, that their minds are going to be blown, and you're less likely to be picked on. You're less likely to be bullied. They probably want to be your friend. And so I wanted her to practice karate. But nobody now I was fighting, man. They were like, nah, you just wanted her to practice karate because you did. That's not the case, but what if it was the case? But it wasn't the case. I knew I couldn't protect my little girl when she was in school. And I do remember growing up, kids that were bullied. Who doesn't? Okay, you never want your kid to be that person. So I wanted to join, and nobody was for it. And then she didn't even want to do it because she was listening to all these other voices that were against it. So what I did was, that was when the Karate Kid came out with Will Smith's kid, Jaden Smith. And of course I had seen the old one years ago, but so I said, let's go to the movies as a family tonight. My wife was amazed because usually she has to come up with the ideas, right? So sure. So we're all sitting at the movies. So my wife's sitting over here, my daughter is sitting between us, and we're watching the Karate Kid. And y'all know how that ends up. The boy gets bullied, pushed around, beat up, and all that stuff. And I whispered to my daughter's ear. I said, "Do you want that to happen to you?" Because she was just getting ready to go to kindergarten. I said, "Do you want that to happen to you?" She goes, "No." I said, "Do you want to practice karate?" "Yes." And that was it. Started practicing karate in kindergarten. And so she went to school. And by the time she went to school, right around that time, she got her yellow belt, her first belt, okay? And so I had, of course, I had a picture of that. And so show and tell was coming in her little kindergarten class. So good. This is what you're going to do for show and tell. I'm going to get a little picture frame. You're going to have a picture of you getting your yellow belt from the black belt teacher. You're also going to have a picture of you standing there like this. And I think another picture with her with what they call a cat stance, or something like that, with this leg up, not a cat stance, whatever, with your leg up getting ready to do a kick. And that's going to be your show and tell. I mean, I planned all this. And she went to school. That was show and tell, man. All these kids were amazed. Karis practices karate, so she was like the hero. So she had all these friends. I knew it. That's the plan. But let me tell you what that did. So now she practiced karate from kindergarten, first grade, second grade. Then she comes to me through my wife because she's afraid to tell me she didn't want to practice karate anymore because she wants to run track. I don't care as long as you're doing something physical. So she ran track. And this workout that I do, the 40-minute martial art workout with the 1,000 punches and the 900 kicks in 40 minutes that I do every day, well, then she and I did that workout together for like the next 2 years, okay? While she's running track. And then she went from track, she didn't stay in that long, then she went from track to basketball. Then she went from basketball to soccer, okay? Then she went to her next school, another school with like hardly any black kids in it, but by this time she's physical. So she started playing basketball there. Then she played soccer there. And then finally, around the 8th grade or 9th grade or so, she took up lacrosse and she became very, very good at lacrosse. And now she runs 5Ks, like a 5K every couple of weeks. She just ran one yesterday, as a matter of fact, and it was like 27 degrees outside in Ohio. She's home to visit. And right now she's practicing for a half marathon. And she's 20 years old. And what I'm saying, I went through all that to suggest that the open door was the karate. This is how life is. You have to step into the unknown. Step into things that you don't know anything about. We surround ourselves with people and knowledge and information that we're already aware of. I mean, this is the frustration that I have with the religious folks, that they're not willing to look at anything outside of their own religion. I've studied the Quran, not in depth, but I've studied the Bhagavad Gita, not in depth. It doesn't challenge me or anything that I believe, but it gives me more of an insight. Man, I read the Bhagavad Gita. As I began reading it, I began seeing that Krishna was like the Jesus in the Bible, or the Holy Spirit, dealing with Arjuna. I mean, the similarities were so amazing, but I would have never known that had I not read a little bit of it. So I'm just saying, we limit ourselves. We don't limit yourself. Because that's a disservice to you, it's a disservice to your children, your family members, it's a disservice to society. When we decide simply to embrace what we already know and nothing else. That's what we see in the politics today. That's what we see in the fighting and the bickering and all the negativity. There's so much ignorance in the rhetoric that the masses of people are spewing because they don't have any knowledge higher than what's been given to them. And I'm telling you, it's my feeling that with AI and with Google and Siri at your fingertips, there is no reason to remain ignorant. And with all the information out there in YouTube, I mean, go to Reliable and go to classes. Go to school. Do something. Take a class. Take a college course at your local community college. Let that be the door to open you to insight, to understanding, to getting more than what you've gotten already. There's so much knowledge out there to be gained by you, and it will help you. It will improve your life. Now, I'm going to give you the last little tidbit here. I hope I've been convincing enough to get you out that chair, to get you. Of course, I want you to exercise and work out and eat healthy and be healthy. And I want to talk about that too in a minute. but it's just as important. It's just as important for you to disseminate, for you to teach the information that you've learned as you're learning it. Because that's what's going to solidify it. That's when you're really going to get it. See, now I'm going to tell you, I don't see myself as a genius as far as planning out the steps in my life to make sure I got to certain points in my life. I mean, it just worked out. And what worked out for me is what I'm sharing with you now. Man, when I came in this thing into the religion with an epiphany when I was 28 years old, man, I was really motivated, and I began to study. And I mean, I studied like with religious books, and maybe 5 or 6 different ones on the floor. Of course, I was single at the time. I'm in the middle of the floor, and I'm reading each one their belief or their take on particular scriptures, in the Bible, and they're all disagreeing with each other. So I'm reading what everyone believes about this particular thing, right? And then I'm trying to use common sense and try to figure out which one is accurate, which one would be more true, okay? And then around that time, so I'd been in the religion maybe about 3 years, and I began, somebody suggested, so I began teaching kids that were bussed in from the inner city once a week. And then from that I was introduced to the juvenile justice system, where I got to speak to young people there every week. And I did that for 17 years. I missed 4 weeks in 17 years. And then I went from there, and during that process, I was like in the church, a deacon, an elder, and I was a staff pastor for like 20 plus years. So, and I've been on TV, this program, for the past 20 plus years, almost 21 years. So and what I'm doing right here with you right now, okay? And so what I'm doing is I'm giving you what I know. That's what solidifies it. That's what makes it even more real to me. It's just not enough to read the book. You're really not getting it. But as you begin to teach it, as you begin to share it, it's becoming ingrained within you. That's the key. That's the key in the martial art. I mean, look, at least it was in my day. You walk into a martial art and you're a white belt immediately. And the first thing they try to teach you is what they call a reverse punch. The karate punch and all that. It's a reverse punch. And it's so hard, you're trying to get it. I don't know why, but it's so difficult. But within a couple of weeks, you got the reverse punch down perfect. And then now they're teaching you how to do a front kick, a front snap kick. Okay, now they got a new guy that just joined the class. They're going to have you teach the new guy how to do a reverse punch, while at the same time you're learning how to do a front kick. So then about a couple months later, a month later, or whatever, you're learning how to do a side kick. Okay, now the guy that you taught to do a reverse punch, he's teaching another guy how to do the reverse punch. You're teaching that guy how to do a front kick. Okay. And then, of course, you're all joining together in the class and doing stuff. But everybody in the martial art, at least in my day, was not only a student, but they were always a teacher. Because there's nothing that solidifies what you've learned than teaching it to someone else. So gather all that, garner all that. And I want to say, yeah, we'll leave it at that. That's enough. We'll save anything else for the next program. I know I've talked your ear off. I hope you got something out of this. I do want to thank you for joining me for another perspective, and I want to invite you to join me again. You take care. Bye.